everything.
Gotcha. I guess thanks for joining us on the Elmer session. Again, it was fairly quiet, but we had a pretty good attendance. Appreciate everyone who joined us there. It was mostly just playing a few videos there, ham radio related. So did not stream it though on YouTube because it would just have been taken down by copyright. So a lot of Starlink. We were talking about some mesh core devices, and played a video from the Denver Astronomical Society of a show and tell. And just that last video there, I think, was the most dangerous planes to fly in Vietnam, behind the wings, from Wings of the Rockies. So if the room is ready.
Drone, you all done?
Yes, sir.
Well, greetings, everybody. My name is Kevin. I'm K0KPS, the club president. And obviously, tonight we're having a hybrid meeting. It's interesting that our membership, individual sent me an email today, and she's been discussing with some of the new members as they come on board what they'd like to see the club do. And the message I got today was, the first one was Meshtastic. So I guess we were pretty good timing to have this presentation. And along those lines, the board meets next week, and we are looking at putting our calendar together for the year. And if you have topics that you would like to see the club present, certainly email president@W0TX, and we can start looking at, some of the options. One of the other options, for somebody was doing SOTA, Summits on the Air. However, you've got to be a certain distance from the summit, and you have to have your equipment away from the vehicles. You've got to hand carry it a certain distance. I can't remember what the requirements are. And the only peak right now that you can drive up to is Pikes Peak, which kind of makes it geographically undesirable since it's like 70 miles away. But some of those topics are, some of the things that we'd like to hear, your input on as to what you would like to see the club do. I know we are looking at doing a POTA sometime this summer. Field Day is the last full weekend in June. I'm sure we'll be doing another club event, putting that together, getting everybody together for that event too. So certainly send me your input so that we can certainly address that. And I've got a question from the studio audience here. And
I have one request about Field Day. Is last year we had a big problem with radios too close together.
so the comment was the big problem we had last year with Field Day was having the radios too close together. And I can second, that comment, because certainly as it's a field day and we like to have, members, try new things out, so when people are trying to learn FT8, and I have to say that one of our club members showed me how to do a little FT8, and I've been doing that pretty much full time now. It's addictive, because you can certainly make your WAS, worked all states, and you can do your DXCC all through FT8 on a digital mode. So, those are some of the things, that we like to, get our members involved in new technologies and stuff along those lines.
Why don't we get another pop-up, another one of those pop-ups, and we can put them further apart? We can put one station in the Salvation Army's van, put one in pop-up one place, and 100 feet away. Or another possibility is to rent a trailer.
Some of the comments here, I don't know if you can hear it, out in the Ethernet there, was get another pop-up tent, so that we can separate them. And another one was to rent a trailer, so we could put them in a trailer. Those are ideas, that the board can certainly look at, so if you've got ideas, ways to improve, we're certainly open for, any and all suggestions. And I've got to mention tonight our thanks for one of our net controllers, Ryan, WR7F, presented, to me that he has a Meshtastic obsession and a session. His obsession is he bought all the equipment, and his session is going to be presented tonight. So I'm going to open it up to the people out there. Are there any questions or comments or anything for me or the board? Because we do have several board members here. So I'll open it up. Any questions?
This is Daron. Sorry.
I saw a new name show up on the webinar. Cindy Nelson, welcome. I don't know if you're a member of the club or you just joined, as a outside, but certainly these sessions are open to any and all hams. Just go to the w0tx.org website, and it's posted on our homepage. So is there anything else from the studio audience here? Hearing none. Well, welcome, Ryan, and I'll turn your obsession session over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm Ryan Frederick, WR7F. I've spent the last 9 months or so dabbling with a mesh radio protocol called Meshtastic. So let's find out what it is. In this talk, I want to impart enough information that somebody can walk away thinking they've learned some things about it. And if they pick up a Meshtastic device, I want you to be able to get the most out of it right away. So still have some references at the end. You can learn some more if you're curious. But let's get started. Interesting. All right, so tonight we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the LoRa radio protocol and the mesh radio protocol Meshtastic. I want to talk a little bit about how things are using it, then go over some of the settings and setup instructions for getting the most out of your Meshtastic device. And finally, I'll mention a couple of other mesh radio protocols to look out for. LoRa is just short for long range. It uses a license-free radio band, which varies by country or region. In the US, falls under the license-free low-power category of 902 megahertz to 928 megahertz, which overlaps a 33 centimeter ham radio band. LoRa's chirp modulation is a spread spectrum modulation. It uses a series of chirps and down chirps, which has shown extreme resiliency and usually achieves a range of 20 to 30 miles for kind of high up but low to the ground use cases, and up to 200 miles from the air. So I've heard of people taking these on airplanes and chatting with them. LoRa is used in many IoT devices and protocols. This is just kind of the basics. There's things like Amazon Sidewalk and others that use LoRa. And as an example, this is just kind of what the up chirps and down chirps look like. I'll go into a little bit more on what this is about, but this is just kind of what a basic LoRa message looks like. All right, there's 3 primary parameters that LoRa uses to communicate. Due to the spread spectrum nature of the protocol, you change any one parameter and you're not exchanging messages. It just can't figure out what's going on. So the first parameter is bandwidth. With LoRa, it will go up to 625 kilohertz bandwidth, but Meshtastic uses anywhere from 31.25 kilohertz up to 500 kilohertz bandwidth. Second is spreading factor, which is how much we spread the data out over time. This is just a frequency chart of what that spreading factor looks like, or a time chart of what the different settings look like. This is a spreading factor of 7 to 12. Newer hardware goes down to 5. So you can cram a lot of data in there potentially. The last is the coding rate, which is how much redundancy we can code to resist noise. Normally we'd refer to that as forward error correction in APRS and other digital modes, but in LoRa it's just the coding rate. So here are some of the LoRa presets that Meshtastic uses. LoRa parameters can be manually specified in the Meshtastic firmware, but this kind of gives you a jumping off point for kind of what some of those settings actually translate into as far as how much data you're carrying. The default preset for Meshtastic is this long fast preset. It gives a good balance of fairly long distance communication while still maintaining the ability to exchange messages fairly fast and other factors. So this mode is pretty popular. Meshtastic in general is pretty popular with ham radio operators. In 2024, at Daytona Hamvention, as you might expect, a large number of ham radio operators showed up with their Meshtastic devices. There were so many Meshtastic devices around, it kind of crashed the network. It couldn't really communicate. There's just so much chatter going on. So short turbo here was invented specifically for high density events. It's popular at Daytona Hamvention, DEF CON, that sort of thing. This is on channel 31 most commonly, and it's has shown much more resiliency in those high density environments. All right, so after LoRa, let's move on to the main topic, Meshtastic. Meshtastic is a decentralized peer-to-peer radio protocol that doesn't rely on internet access to communicate. The Meshtastic calls what we call repeaters, Meshtastic calls them routers. They exist in populated areas, but they're not required. Meshtastic nodes communicate in long distance networks and hop through various other nodes to communicate. So currently it's limited to 7 hops, but it still gives you quite a bit of range. I've regularly exchanged messages with Longmont, which is approximately 45 miles from where I live, and that'd be 5 to 7 hops away. So a good, quite broad reach in this metro area here. Meshtastic messages are typically text messages of up to 200 characters, but can include other information such as temperature, humidity, pressure, location, and other sensor data. So what do these networks look like? We've got 3 different kinds of networks here. On the left diagram, you can see the 2 different kinds of Meshtastic networks, the public and private. These sort of networks can be used for various purposes. When I talk about using Meshtastic personally, I'm going to be on the public network, so exchange messages with just the general folks who have other devices around. But you don't necessarily need to have that. If you want a completely private network that is both encrypted and hidden from other folks, that's totally possible. The right diagram, this is a mixed semi-private, semi-public network. Again, so this gives you some flexibility about using some of those populated links, or using links in populated areas, but still keeping potentially endpoints in more isolated areas that you, So here's some of the Meshtastic devices I've purchased and dabbled with. As you can see, there's a large variety of pre-built devices. Some have screens, some don't. Some have a single button control. The H2T, the R1 Neo, the Seed. Some have multiple buttons We've got a full keyboard, directional arrows on that side. None of that's really necessary, though. Most of this is going to be interacting through your cell phone. All your cell phone is acting as a very smart screen for these devices. It's not connecting to the network, not connecting to the internet or anything like that. So you can use these devices off grid, completely away from everyone. The other thing one of the things I want to point out is I put a stubby antenna on the R1 Neo, but personally I really recommend these like 16 centimeter-ish antennas. They're the best performance I've found so far. Just a quick summary. So we've got a MusicWorks Bass Duo. This is a really interesting device. It's not something I'd recommend yet. They're coming out with a more consumer-friendly version with a case and maybe a better setup and stuff. I bought it because it's a very interesting device, because this is the only device I have, really the only device I can find right now that does 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, which is probably more limited in range, but has a lot more bandwidth capability. So that'll be interesting to see going forward. The rest of these just do the 900 megahertz LoRa. This is the HealthTech Wi-Fi LoRa expansion kit is my favorite for my home device. It has a Wi-Fi chip, so I have it connected up to my network and can do some additional things that normally you wouldn't see. The seed is interesting. I'm not sure I recommend it. It's IP65 rated. If you absolutely need that waterproofing, that would be a device to use, but the antenna is so-so. It's sealed, so there's no changeable antenna on that. The R1 Neo has some water resistance, so that might be a consideration if you need some water resistance. This is my favorite device. I think this is the one that Pete has. Pete brought with him. This is my favorite. That's the one I carry with me if I'm going to carry it. And then some circuits that somebody I know designed and printed up. That are interesting as well. So what's inside a Meshtastic device? All Meshtastic devices have three basic things: a microcontroller for handling the Meshtastic firmware, creating the mesh, formatting messages, interfacing with sensors, and the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth modules on the device. A LoRa radio, obviously it sends and receives messages using the LoRa radio protocol. And then an antenna. As I said in the last slide, a good antenna is absolutely necessary. This is a pretty low, low signal strength protocol. So I have a bigger antenna I brought with me. I'll pull it out of my backpack later. I found the cable line loss to be pretty bad on it, though, so I don't really recommend anything but the 16 centimeter antennas. The interesting thing is these add-ons that you can do with the Meshtastic devices. Like I said, location, humidity, temperature, barometer, battery level, but the GPIO pins are another interesting capability. Since these are essentially ESP32 microprocessors or similar microprocessors, you can build all sorts of additional functionality into the devices. Functionality such as seeing whether a gate or door is open in a remote location, or other sort of similar use cases where you don't necessarily, you're not going to have internet access, but you need to kind of be able to monitor and understand what's going on in other locations. So it's pretty interesting use cases there. Quick walk through the phone app. Try not to overwhelm you, but this will be on YouTube, so you can always go back and refer to it later. So we've got the conversation tab. So there's every Meshtastic device is going to come with this long, fast, unencrypted channel by default. You can kind of think of it as the public square. So lots of people exchanging messages on this long, fast channel. The name doesn't really matter. It's just given a default encryption key that basically means no encryption. So That gives you some interesting options. A couple of test messages that I was sending to friends. These are direct messages, and these would be encrypted messages. And then this Finder channel is just something I created for my own use. So, like I said, the long fast channel is the default encrypted channel anyone can use. I find it's fun to monitor and just see kind of what people are talking about. So this is a lot of the messages I see are these test messages. Hey, testing a new antenna. Yep, I got you. Here's somebody who was on an airplane from Montrose to DIA. They're southwest of Castle Rock, flying over the Rockies, and I got them through the mesh. So this is this symbol down here means 3 hops. So they were 3 hops away. So I didn't receive their message directly, but 3 other nodes were helped me get the message. I sent them a message right back. Actually, a little while later, and almost immediately they replied that they got the message, which is just pretty nifty. And then people are creating bots. You can hook these devices up to your computer. The reason that one device with Wi-Fi is my home node is I can connect to it from my computer and have it send automatic messages. I haven't quite got that set up yet, but it's coming soon. And so some people are sharing weather reports and other sorts of computer-generated messages with everyone. Yeah. I don't think so. We're talking about very low power devices, like very low power, right? Would it be legal? People are doing it, but yeah, that's a question. Anyways, the second tab is the nodes tab. This just gives you kind of a rundown of the most recent nodes you've seen. The information will come across these nodes, such as battery percentage, whether they're plugged in and charging or discharging. Here's a node here showing its temperature, 10 degrees Celsius at its location. And this just lets you see kind of some of the recent stuff, so you can kind of see what's around you without having to have them send messages out to the network. Because these the Meshtastic is kind of exchanging background information all the time. The third tab is going to be is the mesh map. This is just a bunch of the nodes in the node list mapped onto a map, assuming they're sharing their location publicly. You can see Denver's got a pretty populated area. I believe these are accuracy rings, so these aren't a group of people. These are one person somewhere in that zone. So. Notably, you can configure your Meshtastic node with various levels of location precision. This allows you to hide your exact location, like these folks are doing, while still kind of sharing, okay, here's about where I am if you want to know. I'll skip the settings tab for a second. The last tab is the connections tab. This just shows you the devices you've connected to in the past. You've got various ways, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and serial to connect to your devices. Most devices will just have a Bluetooth radio. Some devices will have a dual purpose Bluetooth Wi-Fi radio, but that's an either or situation. So that one home node I've got, which is on my Wi-Fi network, I cannot connect to it on Bluetooth without disabling the Wi-Fi and turning on Bluetooth. So try to go over some settings here. The LoRa settings. This we'll skip a couple of these. These can be left as your defaults for now. But your LoRa settings are going to be the first place you go. When you get your first device, it's not going to assume your region. They don't want you breaking laws as far as like transmitting out of band. So if your device has a screen, it'll pop up on the screen, hey, where's your region? Like the first thing it does. If it doesn't have a screen, you want to come in here and set your region to United States. This will set your power limits. This will set your frequency limits, and then you'll be able to first not only send but receive messages, because the receiver doesn't know what to receive until you set this region setting. Your long fast setting, that's going to be kind of the default. if you hop on long fast, you're going to be able to take advantage of all those other nodes in that area that I showed you on the map that are also on the long fast region or long fast preset. MQTT I'll go into a little bit later. You can leave those off for now. Number of hops, everyone sets this to, or the default is 3 hops. Everyone just sets it to 7 right away. But they recommend you kind of ramp up and make sure your node is good. And then there's a setting down here, RX boost gain enabled is recommended. Frequency slot 20 is going to be the default. Like I said earlier, Daytona Hamvention, this frequency slot is going to default to 31 for short turbo. And that just changes the frequency set here. So. Your channels, this is going to be your default channel that everyone's set up. It's long fast, AQ equals is basically no encryption. Position enabled is your choice. I have my my node set to pretty imprecise location, but it'll go down to all the way down to 124 feet of accuracy, or precise. If you want to share that, definitely not something I'd recommend on the public channel though. You can set up your own encryption since this is unlicensed and low power. You can set up your own encryption node or encrypted channel to share precise location on with yourself if you want. And then uplink and downlink enabled is related to the MQTT settings I mentioned. Your user setting. Your long name can be up to 36 characters. The local Meshtastic group recommends putting coloradomesh.org at the end, which is kind of fun when folks show up with virginiamesh.org or seattlemesh.org in their long names, and you go, and if you travel for work or whatever, showing up as a coloradomesh.org user in other regions is pretty fun. Your short name is going to be 4 characters max, or 1. If you've noticed in the upper right corner, there's been a little penguin icon. That's just the short name for my main node here. And then let's spend a minute on this really interesting licensed ham radio setting. In the US, Meshtastic overlaps a 33 centimeter ham radio band. Spread spectrum ham radio transmissions are limited to 10 watts, but that's a lot higher than these little tiny chips are doing normally. Many devices can't even do the 10 watt ham radio maximum power, but a properly designed amplifier would be able to get you there. A couple other restrictions. Encryption is disabled. There's no encryption on the ham radio bands, of course. And then for the long name, they want you to set your call sign. Since call signs can be longer than 4 characters, it would have to go in the long name slot. I guess I would do Ryan for short name, but other folks wouldn't have the ability to do that. I don't know what you'd do for your short name in that case. Finally, this locks you out of the traditional long fast public square that I mentioned. The ham, because of the complications of non-ham sending, exchanging messages with ham radio operators, Meshtastic just assumes that that's not going to be something we're allowed to do. And so you're only exchanging messages with other folks who've selected the SAM setting. Not the end of the world necessarily, depending on what you're doing with it, but just something to be aware of. The device setting. This client mute option is what I've gone with for one of my nodes. I recommend one of these client options: client base, client mute, client. Clients is just you're part of the node, you're part of the mesh, you're exchanging information. Client mute works just like client does, except you're not necessarily part of the mesh. You're just receiving messages and sending out only your own messages. The router late, and there's a repeater mode in here somewhere. Routers are, due to some of the limitations of Meshtastic, routers should be strategically placed in high locations, top of buildings, mountainsides, places where they're going to have good coverage. Routers can cause problems if you set them up in like a valley and they don't have very good coverage. You can kind of create black holes of Meshtastic messages. So position, you can only share your position with one channel at a time. Like I have a tracker node that uses that finder channel I showed you, that shares precise location on that finder channel. That's an encrypted channel. Only my devices will be able to decrypt. But those messages still go through the mesh just like they normally would as any other mesh message. They're just stay encrypted. But they recommend some broadcast intervals, and they recommend smart position turned on. So there's some settings here, 30 seconds, and I think this is 100 meters. But having this on will have your device share your position if it meaningfully changes enough that the mesh should get an update. However, it will, even though these settings 30 seconds 100 meters are set, it's your device is going to be doing some calculations and possibly sharing your position less frequently depending on how busy the channel is that you're on. Yeah, so Bluetooth settings. If your device has a screen, I would leave this set to random pin. This will change the pin every time you try to connect to it. Every time you try to connect a new device to the Meshtastic node, it'll randomize the pin, show it on the screen. You just put that in when you connect with your smartphone, and you're good to go. If you don't have a screen, obviously the default's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I would recommend changing that. No one else can connect to your node if you're connected to it with Bluetooth. But if you have a home node, you leave it home all day, potentially somebody could come along and connect to it. Probably not too likely, but just better to be prepared. There are a bunch of other settings you can do. This is all related to position sharing, temperature and test data, temperature barometer, other sorts of data. Really don't need to go into it. I do want to talk about MQTT just a little bit. The MQTT is an interesting option, but it feels like cheating to me. The MQTT is where you're sharing messages sent over the internet. You're potentially uploading your messages to the internet, and messages other folks have uploaded to the internet are showing up on your device. Leave the setting off to start, but you can dabble with it at some point. Do a little reading up on it. Turning it on will cause your device to download and upload messages over the internet, even though I had my device configured to only receive messages from Colorado. So this can be, there's like topics, so you can have like US as a topic, or Colorado or Washington or Arizona as a topic. Even with just the Colorado topic, there's a lot more messages I was receiving, and like I said, it kind of felt like cheating. You're not really using the radio, you're just kind of chatting online at that point. So I just turned it off for the long fast channel. It is interesting, the reason I wanted to bring it up though is because potentially in maybe like a power outage situation, it can allow for sending messages out of the region. So messages, not just messages you've sent from your device, will be uploaded over MQTT, but other devices can upload those messages for you as well. So you can send messages out of a region. If somebody has emergency internet like Starlink backup generator, and they're MQTT sharing messages, so messages you send and they receive will go out to the internet, could potentially be picked up by other folks. I've dabbled in exchanging messages with a friend from Washington State over MQTT, which is interesting. Has some interesting applications that, yeah. And then Are there any other mesh protocols? Well, so I haven't dug into LoRaWAN very much. I don't think it's actually a mesh protocol. It's just another thing you can do with LoRa, which is kind of interesting. But I'm kind of interested in the mesh capability, so I haven't dug into that very much. Mesh Core is the protocol most like Meshtastic. The firmware is a bit behind Meshtastic, but it could be a better option in the future. For example, this Mesh Core limits you to 64 hops, whereas Meshtastic is 7, which has a which is really interesting when you're looking at maybe a series of nodes that go all the way down the west coast of the United States or other areas. Mesh Core also doesn't have the brighter black hole problem that I mentioned, like Meshtastic does. So you can have all of your devices, you can have a bunch of devices in one area. They don't have to be strategically placed, and the system works kind of a lot better. And then there's this Arden I've just recently heard about. I need to dig into that some more. I haven't looked into it very much, but it's different than Meshtastic, as it's a licensed amateur radio volunteer created project, and generally uses 2.5 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi devices with the firmware flashed. I have one up here. I can pull it in a minute. So Wi-Fi device, rather than it's not a LoRa protocol, it's custom firmware on Wi-Fi routers, essentially. So. Yeah, so Meshtastic is usually a license-free product, but has some interesting amateur radio properties that could be looked into. I think it's interesting to learn about the technology, and I know there's a lot of ham radio operators using Meshtastic. So hopefully, if your contact is interested in Meshtastic, we might be able to make something happen. So we'll see. Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, great presentation, Ryan. Thank you very much.
It's not directly compatible. It's slightly different from Meshtastic. I have a node flashed with the firmware here. Same devices, LoRa protocol, but you'd need some sort of translator, essentially. So, yeah. Do you want me to look, or?
And can you hear us from the Google Meet chat still?
Barely. Is it in chat, or is it just? Okay.
Yeah, we had one person, and Zoom.
Yeah, go ahead. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, a great presentation, Ryan. Thank you very much. Question I had was on the hops with the Meshtastic and then 64 with the Mesh Core. So for longer distances, like here to Midwest or here to the East Coast, so you're pretty, when you were talking about seeing like Washington Meshtastic org, come up on your screen, was that because somebody from there was here locally, or did it actually hop in 7 hops all the way over to Washington?
Yeah. So when I was exchanging messages with my friend in Washington State, that was over MQTT. So that was over the internet.
Oh, okay.
It was interesting. So my node directly connects to MQTT. It has Wi-Fi. It was interesting because my friend in Washington State did not. So what his node would have done would have been hop to find a node with MQTT enabled, and then gone out to the internet, and then my device picked it up from there.
Now, is Mesh Core, do you think, going to overtake Meshtastic due to the number of hops, or is one more popular than the other, or where do you see it going?
Well, Meshtastic is the more popular mode at the moment. There's a couple hundred users in the Denver area that I know of, at least. I don't know what the population of Mesh Core users is, but from my location in Centennial, I don't see a lot of users at the moment. But I can see Mesh Core becoming more popular in the future because of some of the problems that it kind of fixes from Meshtastic.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
Any latency in the hops, from one to what, where it's a second or two apart, or is it almost instantaneous?
I can't exactly pull it up. I did so just using hops. Oh, I don't think I can even pull it up there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, exchange information in about 60 seconds. Oh, that was direct though. Yeah, so it's a few minutes potentially to go through the hops. So, other questions? Yeah. The one Pete and I have, this H2T. I can bring up that slide here. Yeah, like I said, there is a lot of devices. I've got all of them with me, so I can pull those out here. But this H2T is pretty nice. It's got a screen. You don't really need the screen, but if you're, it does let you manipulate at least some of the settings, and you can see new messages pop up on it. You can buy a belt clip for it. It's just a nice little device. Like I said, if you this Heltec one is a little bit more expensive, but it's also kind of nice if you want some of that internet functionality, or want to program a bot or whatever. So. I don't think you can get them on HRO. You generally get them online. There's just several websites, musi.works. You can look up Heltec. A couple of other. There's lots of websites around. You can just Google them. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. Like I said, I can show off some of the stuff up here if you want to come up. So let me bring this up to the camera here. So this is a little Wi-Fi travel router. You can get depending on the exact model. You can flash the firmware of these little routers with the Arden firmware and hop on the Arden mesh network. So that's what Arden is. Arden uses. But yeah, then your other option would just be like kind of two different sizes of. Yeah, so you've got different form factors, different sizes, different weight. Where's my? Yeah, so here's I call this my Meshtastic BlackBerry. Little full screen, full keyboard option, and then the little tracker card, IP65 rated, but the antenna is less than ideal. So, did you get my message from earlier? You can send you another one. Yeah. Let's see how long it takes to pop up here. See how long it takes to pop up here. Oh, right away. Yeah. Here you go.
All right, I think that's all we've got from this side. So again, thank you very much, Ryan, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. And like that, thank you, Ron, for your comment as well for Ryan here. Appreciate it. And are there any other questions that I can ask Ryan here before we let everybody go? Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Daron, I think we're good on this side, so I'm going to drop here. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to put on there.
Nope, I think we're good. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great night.
And take care.
Bye.
All right, so that was our presentation for this evening. Again, streamed over on youtube.com/Denver Radio Club. So if you didn't catch the whole thing, you can go back and watch it on there. If anybody has anything, otherwise we'll close out our Google Meet here as well. All right, well, next month, the third Wednesday of the month, 15th of April, we will see you then. Topic to be announced. With that, everyone have a good evening.